Hey guys, Jengar here. Welcome to today's episode of Jabber with Jengar. Jeez, man, I wanted this to become a little bit of a random video made up quickly, but I don't know how many a take this is, but I've been talking too long on a single subject for several times now. It's funny again. I love to derail myself sometimes, especially in these random videos where I don't really have a bullet point thing to keep me on track. But today I want to talk about Rumble, I want to talk about locals, I want to talk about the rank reviews and what's going to be the sequence a little bit, because I've had a lot of questions about that. And I want to talk a little bit about the Ukraine-Russia situation, where I find the portraying of that situation in the Western media very funny again, because I mean Putin, he might not be the ideal son-in-law, but he might even be a bad guy, but he's definitely not the only bad guy there. And for some Russians, he is definitely the savior of Russia and the savior of their lives. But I'll get into that in a little bit, because man, people don't know anything anymore, right? People forget their history very, very quickly. But anyway, in the meantime, in the background, you are looking at the magnificent Hurricane Mk IIB trop, which is a fantastic hurricane, one of the best. It won the poll. You guys love this hurricane the best, and I did have the footage. I didn't make a review because I had a good review up on this plane, but I decided I could not let this footage get you by without looking at it. So here we go. This is the footage of the Mk IIB trop that I had. Very interesting, very fun plane. And in the meantime, we'll go into the subjects that I just mentioned. Okay, Rumble and locals. Now, I just talked 10 minutes about it. I want to keep it a little bit shorter on this take. Bloody hell, man. Yeah, so YouTube, man. YouTube is, for a certain group of people in the world, the people who are more conservative, who are more libertarian, who are more freedom-loving, freedom of speech lovers in this sense. YouTube is more and more a site where you have to watch your words, because they like to put some censorship into place when you are critical about certain subjects, and they really guard the woke government line, the left-leaning line that has been in our governments for so long that I can't remember. So if you are in that group of people, you will have seen channels that you know disappear, being banned, being demonetized, videos that you love disappeared, and even your comments being removed. I've had that happen to me as well, where in the comments in the summer and lately as well, when you have comments about COVID and you combine certain words, say goodbye to your comments, because it will get removed immediately. And according to me, this has no place in a democracy. We're a democracy, and one of the cornerstones of a democracy is freedom of speech. It's a marketplace of ideas, and the best ideas win. And all ideas are welcome. In my opinion, even a neo-Nazi should be free to express his opinions, because if you get these opinions out, put them in the lamplight and discuss with a guy like that, you might even change his mind, because his ideas are foolish, right? So never censor somebody into the darkness. Put people into the darkness, they will get into little groups on the darker sides of the web, and they will only become more extreme. Freedom of speech should be absolute. Everything should be said, and the worst opinions will get out there, will be smiled at. You know, it will not be taken seriously, but it should be free. The moment you start to censor, I mean, a censorship belongs in a dictatorship. But anyway, I'm derailing again, talking too long about it. YouTube has censorship, and I'm talking about sensitive stuff sometimes in my Jabber episodes. So I'm worried that I might be demonetized, or that I might be banned even one day. Who knows? I don't know how far they are willing to go. So yeah, for that reason, I want to have a backup site where my content can be found, and I've chosen Rumble for that. So I'm gonna have Rumble up for that. I've linked it to YouTube, so everything that's get uploaded there will get uploaded on Rumble as well, and it will be for that reason. And the freedom lovers among you should definitely Get on there, follow me there, because in the case that YouTube becomes even worse than it is right now. So there's that. Locals is a second site when it comes to that. It will not be a backup site like Rumble is, but will be my Patreon basically. Everybody knows Patreon, right? Not everybody may know Locals yet, but Patreon is the go-to site usually for people to get support from their communities financially. And I've been on Patreon for a little bit, but they're just as bad as YouTube when it comes to censorship. I've seen them ban some of the people that I follow because they have controversial opinions, not mainstream, right? They do a bit of thinking in there, they have some different opinions, and when you express that, Patreon took it among themselves to take away their financial support from their fan bases by banning them. And just basically ridiculing all the people that followed them and that supported them. So I could not stay on Patreon at that point. I was on Patreon. I had made a nice start there with people supporting me, but then Patreon began to ban people and began to put their political viewpoint, which is very liberal, left-leaning, woke when it comes to the owners of Patreon. And they started to ban people who held different opinions. So I couldn't stay on Patreon. Not banned them, but I removed my channel there and moved away from it. So I didn't have any financial backing since then. And just the YouTube income. And I was looking for a site where I could do that. So Dave Rubin, who is used to be a left-leaning gay guy from California, he opened his eyes at a certain point and he woke up, and he's now more central, more freedom of speech leaning personality who decided to make a platform for supporting people. That became Locals, and he joined forces with Rumble. So Rumble and Locals worked together, so that combination really worked well for me. So the local site will be a place where I will share with you more personalized content about me and my family and my son and stuff like that. Find it I really want to do that a little bit more, but also put in some more in-depth videos on there on several subjects that might be too controversial for YouTube, because I don't want to ruin my YouTube channel, man. I worked for 6 years on that. I've got almost 25,000 subscribers there. I would find it a real shame if that piece of work would be removed, right? So maybe some stuff I don't want to put on there because I don't want to ruin my own work there. So I'll put that on Locals, and I hope you will all join me there for some healthy discussion without censorship, where all opinions can be shared. That is very important to me. I've had sometimes, and it's so funny, but I had some remarks where, Jengar, why are you removing my comments? And I was like, man, I am not removing anything, man. It's YouTube. If you combine certain words, YouTube automatically removes comments. People thought that I was taking away content or comments that were against my opinion. I never do that. I don't remove any comments. I like a discussion. I like a debate. If you win a debate from me, man, hey, you won fair and square. Because I usually can win the argument. But so I never remove anything. I hate censorship. It should all be out in the open. So yeah, man, join me on Locals. Join me on Rumble. I would really appreciate it if you took the time to do that. Really helps me out. For the rest, I basically said everything. The links of that will be in the description below, so you can join me there. Russia, man, it's fucking funny. Ukraine, well, it's not funny because I don't condone war. I don't really like it, what happened there. But people think the only guy to blame is Putin. And of course, that is the picture that the mainstream media wants to have us believe. Putin is the bad guy. Russia is to blame for everything. But Putin is not the only bad guy in that whole situation, man. It's been going back for a long time. Ukraine and Russia have a relationship that goes back 1,000 years. Although Ukraine didn't exist then. It's the area that existed, right? Ukraine only really came into being as a name when Lenin gave it a place of its own. But this whole situation with Ukraine, I mean, what is the NATO doing on the borders of Russia, right? With the Baltic states, let's say that. But let's go back in time a little bit, and the fall of the Soviet Union with Yeltsin and with Gorbachev and the sellout of Russia to the Western world. The Western world was about to steal all the natural resources that Russia has and give it to private persons and then have the West profit off that. Putin came into view then, and he put a stop to that, basically. He told all the billionaires in Russia to either support Russia again or to go away. And he put people in jail. He made measures that gave the people of Russia their resources back, basically, because it was all being stolen. That period, my wife is Russian, by the way, so that period was really difficult for a majority of the Russian population. Just the fall of the Soviet Union and the period between where Yeltsin was in charge and everything was being stolen. People were put out of their houses. Criminals came in and said, this house is ours now. You have to leave in 3 months' time. Stuff like that was happening all the time. It was a survival period, basically. People were looking for food. You needed to have resources to survive that period. And many people cooperated. People and neighborhoods cooperated and helped each other out because the government was gone. It was a lawless period. It was terrible. People really longed back towards the Soviet days because things were really still stable then. Then Putin came into view and he put an end to that. He put the resources back in charge of Russia. He told people to work together with him or otherwise there would be consequences, and it worked. And he got Russia stabilized again. He got prices stabilized and the bad situation went away. Things came back into the supermarkets. People could live again. And it worked from there. Putin, actually, in those days, wanted to join NATO. He wanted to work together with the West. Over the years, from the 90s and the 2000s, Putin really stretched his hand out to the West many occasions and tried to work together with them. He said, please let us in. We're normal people. We want to work together with you. We want to create a stable, safe place in the world. And please let us join. And the West didn't do that. The West thought they won. They slapped the hand away and basically treated Russia like a pariah state. And Russia tried to find means in the meantime to survive, and they did. They built up their economy again from nothing. They built up their military again from nothing. They tried to find partners in the world to work with, and they always had a preference for the West. They always had a preference for the West, but the West drove them into China's hands. Since the reunification of Germany, the West has promised Putin not to, or Russia in general, not to move further west. After the reunification of Germany, they said we won't go further east. We won't let countries in. Well, Poland joined, Baltic states joined, and every time they went further east, they promised Russia, we will not go further east. We promise, trust us. They've been sanctioned, Russia, when they were critical of things that happened. And every time NATO came further east, right? And Russia is surrounded by NATO bases, basically. All around them are NATO bases. NATO is at their borders right now, and then they came to Ukraine. But before they came to Ukraine, they came to some other places as well. God damn it, we're running out of video. Shit, I will have to I have to use some other footage as well. I'll be right back, guys. Okay, so I guess I'll use a little bit of the Mark IV footage as well. I didn't know it would take this long. When I thought I had 15 minutes, that's plenty, but no. But yeah, so NATO came to the borders of Russia eventually. And then they started meddling in Russian territory, like Georgia and Georgia, I don't know the English word anyway, but and another state, or I don't exactly remember which one it was. Was it either Kazakhstan or something else? But there were two scenarios where the West tried to organize a color revolution in those countries. You know those, of course, hopefully. Regime change. The West has been doing that since the 60s. CIA has been involved with a lot of color revolutions. Rainbow revolutions, or however you want to call them. And it's they've been trying to do that in Russia with certain provinces of them, and trying to get those states to have regime change so they could join the West. And Russia put a stop to that as well. But they've been meddling with places inside of Russia for that. And Putin has been warning the West, listen man, you are meddling in our affairs, you get the fuck out, or else we will start to do something. But he's always refrained from doing anything. He never really retaliated. Yeah, well, he protected his areas and those color revolutions did not happen. But bloody hell, man, Belarus is another place where they try to organize a thing like that. It has failed, but it's one of those states that still supports Russia. If you support Russia, man, you're not sure of your life. Fucking hell. But anyway, in that situation, you have to think about this in decades back. Promises broken. Broken promises again and again and again towards Russia. Encroaching on their borders with NATO. Building bases around them, trying to have states in Russia, trying to get regime changes in those different states, to get them to flip towards pro-Western governments and try to get NATO bases in them. All this stuff, man, sanctions on Russia for everything and everything they do and say. They've been treated like a pariah state for so long, while they actually wanted to join the Western sphere, right? So with all this background going on, you've got this stuff happening in Ukraine, where also a color revolution happened, a regime change happened, where a pro-Russian government was being removed and replaced for a pro-Western government. And if you go into the details on that revolution, I mean, it's billionaires in charge right now of the Ukraine, right? It is not normal people going for the best interests of Ukraine there. It is billionaires who are minded towards the West that were put in place there. It is not a very colorful, nice situation that happened there. Not that it was great before, I'm not going to say that, but I mean, that's what happened. And in that time, NATO wanted to take Sevastopol, which is the southern, on Crimea, the southern military harbor, main military harbor of the Soviets. They took that from the Ottomans more than 500 years ago. And the only reason why it's part of Crimea is because during the Soviet days, Brezhnev or something put the administrative responsibility of Crimea to Ukraine area because it was the most convenient. It was close by, but it is mainly Russians living on Crimea, right? And the same goes for the Donbas. It is just mainly, it's a majority Russians living there. And it is a hot area when it comes to that. And when the Ukraine stuff happened, it was already the question whether they wanted to have the same treatment as Crimea. But Russia was never going to let go of Sevastopol, right? I mean, it's logical. It's their own military harbor that's been in their possession for 500 years. Yes, it's been administratively, it was added to Ukraine, but it was always Russian. And I'm not for Putin. Again, let's get that clear. I'm not. My wife is Russian, yeah, for sure. But it is not like I'm a Putin supporter. But if you look at this geopolitic-wise, strategic-wise, a country like Russia would never give up that harbor. Just like, for example, America would not give up their military harbors in Florida because it would want to become part of Cuba, right? Would America do that? No way in hell they would let that happen. So Putin wouldn't let that happen either. So he took Crimea. Logical situation. If you look at the history, man, it's just, god damn it, man. But now the Donbas area, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of Russians living there. I had a whole crisis 8 years ago with war with Ukraine, where the Donbas regions, republics, wanted to join Russia because, yeah, there's a lot of Russians living there. And it didn't happen back then. They did have a war, but the last 8 years have not been very colorful for those people. There have been a lot of incursions of the ceasefire by the Ukrainian army and a lot of villages have been ravaged by the Ukrainian army. So there's a lot of grief there, a lot of pain, and they definitely don't want to join Ukraine anymore. There's also a lot of Ukrainians there that don't want to join Ukraine anymore. It's a very complicated situation, let's say. And I'm not condoning the attack right now that's happening. I would have preferred peace, but it is not very strange that this is happening right now. It is sequence upon sequence, act upon act, and a lot of lying that has driven a country that really wanted to become part of the West. It's driven it to extreme measures, man. And you can debate about whether that is good or not. You could think about what you would do in a situation if you were a leader of a country like that, in a situation like that, that's been lied to so many times, that has been sanctioned so many times. And if you really want to go into who's really the aggressor, you have to look at a map with American bases. You go look at a map of American bases around the world, and you will see a whole ring of them around Russia and China. Now, it is not Russia and China surrounding America. And I mean, I don't like communism. I don't like the CCP. I quite hate it, because it's not for freedom, right? It's not for freedom of speech. It censors the hell out of people. It has a social credit system. I hate all that stuff. I don't want that here. But how have those countries been treated? And could we have done anything else to save their, to promote freedom there and stuff like that? I mean, I found it so hypocritical these days that people are still trying to talk about censorship in China, while they're censoring the hell out of people with a different opinion on COVID in the West. I mean, is that any better? God damn it, man. I mean, we're losing our freedoms left and right here in the West, and we're talking about China. We should look at our own back garden, man. We are losing our freedoms here. It's terrible. And so is the situation in the Ukraine. It is not very nice that is happening. It's not very good. But is Putin the bad guy? Are Russians the bad people? Did Ukrainians do nothing? Man. I mean, I've read about stories in the Ukraine where the Ukrainian army broke the ceasefire and went into villages. You really don't want to know what happened in those villages, man. It wasn't colorful either. So yeah, I mean, we should definitely find solutions for that whole situation, but maybe the solution is to have those places join Russia. And the fact that, I mean, that's so funny as well, that Putin is talking about Ukraine not existing, right, and not having a legitimate place in the world. And of course that is an exaggeration of as well, but I mean, Ukraine was created by the people who founded the Soviets, the Soviet Union. It was given a name only then. And of course there have been people living there for a long time, but I mean, the place that's called Ukraine now has been part of the Austrian-Hungarian Empire. It's been part of Lithuanian Empire for a while. It's been part of Russia. It's been part of so many things, but it never was Ukraine. It was never a unified country for it. It hasn't existed for that long. And then of course, but it exists now, and people there should have a choice of what they want as well. But we should definitely look at things like Catalonia wanting to be independent from Spain, which is not happening. Right, there are so many places where we say in the West, like, oh, these people deserve their own governance and stuff like that, but when it happens in situations like this, we are not for it. And I think that we should always have people looking at places where there is really a call for freedom, people wanting to have self-governance, and have a critical look on that. And not only when it fits our Western agenda, not only when it fits our needs, or when we want regime change and we want looking for a reason to start a war. How hypocritical Do you know how often the West has used the term peacekeeping to start a conflict? Do we recall maybe Iraq? Maybe Libya? Maybe Syria? So when the West uses the term, we want peacekeepers, or we want this, we're going in to keep the peace. How many times has the West lied to start conflicts? And this is not to talk right what Putin is doing. I don't think he should have started this. But there is reasons for this, people. There is a background. And people have to be aware of that. People don't remember it. Nothing of this is spoken about in Western media at all. While there is so much history and so much stuff to talk about when it comes to situations like this. But our Western media, again, just like with coronavirus, is completely biased towards government, Western government think lines. And that is not good to me, man. We should have debates, we should open up, and we should use all the knowledge that we have at our disposal to look at these things. Anyway, guys, I want to thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye. If you're new here, make sure to hit the subscribe button, become part of this community. If you are already a subscriber, don't forget to like the video, do leave me a comment, and if you really feel like helping out today, make sure to share the video with your friends and let them know about the channel.